Welcome to the podcast, Melody and Friends, where I will be taking a virtual tour around the world, interviewing all kinds of wonderful people. And today, I virtually land in Arizona to talk to KayLee Dunn about resilience after betrayal. Welcome, KayLee.
Hi, thank you for having me on, Melody.
Yeah, so this is our first opportunity to meet one another, although we're talking off air. We've been in similar circles, probably even maybe rubbed shoulders at some point, and we didn't know it for a long
Probably.
time. So I'm just really excited about diving into your story and what you do and just getting the word out there to breathe hope into other women and help other women.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I guess I can start with my story, right? That's
Yes.
the best place to start. So I grew up in Arizona, and when I was 15, I love at first sight, saw the love of my life across the marching band field. and
I love it.
we became best friends, and then eventually I snatched him up. No. And then he went on a religious mission and we wrote. So we were really connected for a lot of years, even just very young. And then I went to college and he followed me to Utah, and we were just, in love and gonna do
Yep.
it to eternity. We're gonna make it forever. And then we were engaged, and I had a dream. And in that dream, he was having orgies. And at that point, I hadn't actually been exposed to orgies too much. So it was a pretty disturbing dream. I was
Yeah.
pretty naive, pretty young. And I was really disturbed by it. And we were actually long distance. At this point, I forgot to say, at this point, he was actually still in Arizona. We were long distance. And I let him know about that dream. And he, maybe a day or two later, said, I've got to tell you something, and opened up about his pornography addiction that he had been carrying throughout his childhood. And so, although at this point I'm young, we're not married, we'd been committed for a long time in my heart. But what started happening for me is betrayal trauma symptoms. I didn't know that, but I couldn't eat for several, weeks, and I couldn't sleep, and I would have nightmares, and I would go to class and the whiteboard would be up and my brain would just see pictures and pictures and pictures of what I was imagining. He, at that point, I don't remember if we used the term addiction. Maybe we did. And if we did, we just heard it in passing or something. Because again, this is 2007. So
Yeah.
nobody's talking about anything. I went to the library and go to Google, and there's just not a whole lot out there at this point. I think you know that, right? There's not a
Mhm.
whole lot quite yet. And I'm just desperately looking for answers. And I break up with him for a while, and then we get back together and just kind of drag ourselves forward.
Mm.
Um, he says he'll quit. He has a couple relapses, although he's not really in recovery. So, he's just whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, he's honest about it. He feels bad. And then we just kind of keep dragging ourselves forward. We do get, well, I did tell him, I don't know where I got this idea. I might have heard someone say it somewhere, but I said, I'm not going to marry you till you've quit for a year. And so he did, and he was honest. And I mean, but of course I'm in trauma. So I'm
Right. Right.
feeling obsessive and unsure. And I don't know if he's telling the truth. And he was fairly patient compared to what I've seen out in the world. He was fairly patient, but anyway, we just kind of moved forward. And I changed my major. I was a music ed major, and I changed it to family studies at that point, or really human development and family systems, and decided that I wanted to become a therapist and figure this out, because I was talking to professors, now it's 2008, 2009, 2010, and I'm talking to professors going, will someone do research with me? And they're like, no, thank you. Then I go to grad
Mm.
school, and people start studying it, right? Barbara
Yep.
Steffen's book comes out. There's more material out there. There's more support, but he and I are still pretty just dragging our way through it. So I'll have these depression days, as I used to call them, where I would just lay in bed and cry, and he would just sit by me and cry because he didn't know what to do. And he remained sober from pornography, but as we all know, that's not recovery. So
Right.
he had a lot of habits and behaviors and attitudes that were emotionally abusive. He didn't even know he was doing or know how to stop, or that he was aware of. And then he'd go back into the same patterns over and over again. And again, I know that this isn't everybody's story. I want to make sure I'm really clear that each person's story and each person's journey is different and unique and separate. And while my story ends with really happy, connected, beautiful relationship, spoiler alert, not every partnership has that. And even if you don't have that, that doesn't mean you can't have a happy ending.
Right.
So I want to share that piece before I keep going on in my story. But ultimately, we keep dragging ourselves forward, and we discover.
Can I stop you for a quick second?
Oh, for sure. Please interrupt me.
You said something really, really important that I want to point out. And,
yeah, please.
You said that he was sober, which I think obviously that's the goal. It's not just sober, but it's living in recovery, which is multi-layers. But you also said there were other things. And when somebody has had a history of struggling with pornography, it impacts so many things. The emotional maturity.
Yes.
Sometimes the lack of showing up just in hard things.
Lack of engagement.
So, yeah. So I think it's really good that, and maybe we can expound on this in a minute, but, I think sometimes women, after this incredibly devastating disclosure, whatever that ends up looking like, kind of their goal can be, oh my gosh, if we can just be sober. And it's like, no, some women have terrible marriages for the rest of their lives with a sober man.
Absolutely.
Because 100%. He still doesn't learn all the tools needed to have emotional connection and intimacy and all the things. So
exactly.
We'll circle back around to that, but that was really
exactly. And I don't think, and I'm using the language that we had back then, which was sobriety and recovery. I think we know a lot more now than ever. And thankfully every day, I think more is unfolding as more people speak out and tell their stories. But, ultimately it's not about quitting a behavior. It's about becoming a new person, because your development is so intertwined with abuse. If that's your childhood, which is the case for many people. So anyway, I didn't. And of course, myself in that moment, if I do time travel back, then I felt guilty that I wasn't happy with what I had, because so many others didn't even have sobriety. So I'm like, I should just be happy. And, but I'm also just like my mom, and I'm stubborn as hell, and I'm not going to just give up. So anyway,
I want more. Like, exactly. It's okay to want more. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, so moving forward, we discovered 12-step, and that was what was available at the time, and it was beneficial. We plowed forward, and then we were, and I would say, we were great friends. We got along well in many ways. There was a lot of positivity in the relationship, but that healing for me had not quite come in my own work. Like I said, there can be a happy ending regardless of the relationship. And I think sometimes for those of us whose relationships are doing well, we can get stuck thinking that, well, technically they're sober, or even, because I've met with lots of women who their partners are the epitome of recovered, right? And they're kind and patient and humble and willing and accountable and all the right things. Mine wasn't at this point, but they can be. And yet we still feel like garbage. We still feel hurt and wounded, because they are hurt and wounded. And so I had to do my own work, which took some humbling, and that was really difficult to come to. And then also my husband had a lot of work to do as well. So we did get into therapy. We did get into, literally every layer that you need to do from some really solid people and solid places. And mind you, by this point, when we finally, I would say I hit my rock bottom 7 years later, so 2014, I hit my rock bottom. I'm already a therapist, right? So I'm helping people with this. I'm helping people with this. Yeah, even therapists have to do the work. Even your coaches have to do the work and keep doing it. And also, there were some things that happened at my turning point that no one ever really taught me, even in all the books I'd read and all the podcasts I listened to and all the articles and all the research I'd done and all the academics I talked to and all the therapists I'd worked with. There were some really important pieces that fell into place for me. I think I don't know, just divinely came down or something that really made a huge turning point for me that I teach my clients that weren't really instructed out there. So that's part of why I moved. I still provide therapy, and I'm an EMDR therapist, a nervous system and trauma focused therapist for Betrayal. And I also provide coaching, which I can put those puzzle pieces in as well. So when we can talk about that resilience stuff that you brought up at the beginning. But ultimately, again, yes, my husband did do all the things, 4 years of therapy and all the trauma work and medication and groups and humility and checking in with accountability partners every day and checking in with me every day, all the things. And yes, that has led to us be able to stay married. Because had he not done that, I mean, he lived in his car for 3 weeks during that rock bottom, right? For some weeks, I can't remember. But he lived in his car. There was some mess at that rock bottom, and we would not still be today had he not done that work. But even if he hadn't have done that work, and even if we didn't work out, even though we have 5 children, I would have been okay because of the things that I learned during that process. Exactly. And that's the happily ever after.
Yeah.
And it feels
I love how you
so
said
terrifying and backwards, but
yeah, I love how you said that, because I think so many times, and I know we were talking about this before, is, women tend to gravitate toward who stays together or who doesn't stay together. I remember, people would hear my story years ago and they're like, I want your story. And I'm like, but your story is the story that's being written right now. And
absolutely,
the most important thing out of this is not the outcome, it's the healing.
absolutely.
And you've got to go through the pain to heal from the pain. And I would say, from therapist to therapist or coach to coach, like, one of the things I tell women, because they go to one therapist and they're like, they told me I need to have sex more. Or they told me I need to, whatever the crazy stuff. And I'm
whatever nonsense.
And they're devastated. And I'm like, well, let's go vet a counselor. Like, not only do they need to understand, they don't necessarily have to understand what betrayal trauma is, but they have to understand what trauma is.
100%.
Because if they understand trauma, whether it's rape or whether it's betrayal or whatever, there are common themes in trauma, safety, and all the things. But
exactly. But
vetting a counselor or a coach is paramount, because, like, and I hear you saying this, like, my recovery is not over. Like, I'm always looking for another tool. I surround myself with colleagues who are in this space that we can talk about what's working for you, or what book did you read, or what, but then also, my divorce was final end of 22 or beginning of 2022, but I did an intensive since then. And I want to continue learning and growing, because we can only take people where we've been. So unless I continue to get tools for my toolbox, I'm not going to be able to extend those tools to other people. Yeah. Absolutely. And sometimes I'll say, I paid a lot of money for this tool, so I'm going to give this tool to you. And hopefully you won't have to pay for it.
And time. I mean, I feel like when we provide our courses and our coaching and one-on-one or in a group, that, it's like, let me take a decade of belly aching and heart aching and nights until 3 a.m. researching and reading and working with thousands of people and gleaning from their skills and tools that they bring that's not in the data. Let me give that to you so you don't have to do it, Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And some of it is in that journey. I really am pivoting some of my course towards the heroine journey. And oftentimes as women, we don't feel like heroes of our own story because we haven't been taught that we are. And a big reason for that is that the hero's journey is written from a masculine perspective. And if a female tries to walk the hero's journey, they're not provided the same level of accolades or acceptance.
Right.
Where the heroine journey is like, the best example is the movie Moana. Hopefully I'm allowed to talk about that on here, but the movie Moana, which is my favorite Disney movie of all time. And there is a moment where we're all alone on a boat in the middle of the ocean, chucking the heart, saying, I'm giving up. And we chuck the heart into the ocean and say, no more. And yes, we have our support people, right? The grandma comes. I always tell people, let me be your grandma Tala. The grandma comes and provides a little bit of direction. But at the end, we have to recognize, oh, it's me. I have within inside of me exactly what I need to move forward and to succeed and to progress. And yes, I have these support systems that help me, but at the end of the day, it's you, it's inside of you. That's where the answers are. But at the beginning of Betrayal, if someone comes up to you and is like, you're not broken and you have everything you need, it feels like a slap in the face because no, I don't. I'm literally in a ball in the corner of my bathroom with the lights off,
Bleeding
crying
out.
my eyes out. Yeah. And I'm dying here. Just save me, right? Someone come save me. But
I love how you mentioned Moana, and I love how you mentioned Disney movies because I'm like Merida is my favorite just because I've always been a wannabe redhead, and
totally.
as a coach,
You have the curly hair though, so
yeah,
that's good.
One day I might still go redhead, who knows? But I love Merida because I feel like sometimes that little girl, and it's kind of more like that little girl where you're like, but it shows that family dynamic of what she had to kind of live through. So I love that from a coach's standpoint of just, what does it look like to stand up and use my voice? But then I love Mulan because she literally had to face, bringing shame on her family and lots of other things to ultimately fight and step into, and so
Totally.
it's funny that we're both talking about Disney movies, but I'm like, watch those Disney movies because there's something beautiful about those.
Absolutely.
Stepping in and going, I don't know that I can do this, but like, I can do this,
Right.
and,
That I have.
and I always tell moms, like, whether you stay in your marriage or not, that is always going to be up to that person. But like, your kids need one healthy parent. So do the work for yourself, but also do the work for your kids because your kids will model courage and safety and relationships and all the things if you will choose to fight and do the work right now.
That is so true. And I think ultimately you were talking about going to the junkie therapists, even the ones that have all the letters after their name that are supposed to be the ones who care for us and help us. One big component in the work that I do is running into that in my courses that I've taught over the years so much across the country. You just see that so often. And we say often, there's this big question of like, well, is this anxiety or is this my intuition? And, if you listen to coaches, a lot of times they'll say the words like, trust your gut. But what does that actually mean? And how do I actually do that? And how do I know if it's anxiety or intuition? So a big unit in my course, in my program, is really not just learning to sense your intuition, connect there, and make decisions from there, but also to feel really confident in that as well, and clear out the trauma and the confusion that comes after betrayal. And because you may not, like you said, you may not have a specialized betrayal trauma therapist or coach. Like,
right.
Luckily and thankfully, there are so many organizations that are helping to train and teach more and more specialized professionals. And I'm grateful for that. But compared to the number of people who've experienced betrayal in an intimate relationship, you just may not have access to that. But if you can trust your intuition, you can find a helper that can support you on your journey in a way that works for you.
Right.
And so that's a huge piece there. And sometimes that means getting in with someone and feeling safe, and then not feeling safe and having to determine with that clinician or with that coach, like, they're telling me X, Y, and Z. That doesn't feel good. But why doesn't it feel good? Is that because it's hard and I don't want to do the work? Or is that because they're not a safe person And how do I tell the difference? So once I can determine and I can really trust myself, then the sky's the limit on our growth. And that speaks to resilience after betrayal, which, we can talk about in a bit.
Yeah, no, I love how you said that. And I'll just add a little disclaimer that early on in this journey, if you're a woman and you're down the road, obviously this may not be applicable, but if you're within, weeks or months or hours of a disclosure or, being blindsided by betrayal, like you're most likely not going to trust your gut because you don't trust anything. You don't trust
Totally.
anybody. And
Nope.
so I will just say, like, if you have some few close friends and the way you know that they are safe friends is they don't judge you, try to fix you, shame you, oh, just take them back or whatever.
Try to
Like
tell you what to do. Yep.
right. They'll just sit in the space with you. It's sometimes I talk about borrowing intuition, borrowing wisdom, borrowing, some of the safety needed from those that you trust. And sometimes that may be one or two people. I don't usually recommend one just because it can be too much. You can
Get
almost
too
trauma
reliant.
bond.
Yeah.
Right. But borrowing some of that, some of your friends going, Mel, I just don't have a good feeling about that. Until you get that confidence in your own gut again, because we kind of lose some of that when trust has just been blown up everywhere. But that gut has been given to us and we can get back in touch with that. It may just take some practice. So
absolutely.
Friends can be a real, pivotal place and a lifeline until you've got that. So
Yeah, exactly.
We'll talk a little bit more about that. I love that. I love that you said, is it my anxiety or my intuition?
Yeah. I mean, how many times do people that you work with ask you that? Like what, or even just ask like, what's happening here? What's going on? What do I need to do next? These are all that same question. Is this my trauma? Is this my past being present? That's another way to say that. Is this my past being present or is this my present? And especially when it comes to seeking safety, that's a pivotal question. So for some of us, like me, it was, I'm actually in a fairly safe situation. Things do need to change. Don't get me wrong. Things needed to change. But like my intuition or my nervous system would be on the fritz going, siren, 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 there's a problem. And there was some attitudes that needed adjusting. Don't get me wrong. But the intensity was like, he's cheating on me, right? It was so big. It was like, I'm not safe. I'm not safe. So learning, my alarm systems or my alarm bells are going off, but what does that actually mean? And our nervous system, or I say our inner survivor, is really good at letting us know something's off or something was off in the past. And that's getting, that button's getting pushed again. It's not always great at telling us exactly what's going on.
Right.
But our intuition or our gut, the still small voice inside of us that is the self, actually can give us a lot of wisdom and direction. Yeah. We have a lot of inner wisdom that comes from experience plus neuroception equals intuition. So we have that to access. But if we have our alarm and that inner survivor, that alarm bell that I was talking about, it's not a bad thing. It gets pathologized like crazy in the clinical world, in the coaching world. You're broken, you're codependent, you're
borderline,
you're a crazy traumatized person. I mean, even though the word trauma is so helpful and useful in the description of what's going on, it can even be weaponized, right? Oh, that's just your trauma. I mean, I've heard that from so many clients that their partners have said, oh, that's your trauma. It's like, that's inner survivor. She's a survivor. She was victimized and now she is surviving what's happened to her in the best way she knows how. And that is a beautiful, if you believe in God-given thing that you have in your body to keep you alive. Yeah. And if you had a lion after you or a mugger or a dog or whatever, thank goodness for your inner survivor. Mm-hmm. She's one part of you. And another part, your inner wisdom, your inner thriver, your inner compass, whatever you want to call that, there's that piece too. And so making friends with them is a really important way to proceed in identifying, is this, okay, my alarm bell went off, rather than, oh, that's my trauma, ignore, right? Or whether it's like, oh, that alarm bell went off. oh my gosh, I need to act immediately and react to this. It's thank you, inner survivor, for alerting me, the watchdog of my house, right? Thank
Yeah.
you for alerting me that something here needs to be addressed. And now I've got to go in a little deeper and I've got to tap into these other parts of myself.
Yeah, and I want us to I want to do a hypothetical with you because I think it would be good. Sometimes when women hear this, like for instance, what Kaylee's you're talking about right now is, let's say, hypothetical would be your husband just left for work and maybe you've texted him and he's not responding. And
mm,
so all of a sudden you replay a past scenario. When he's not responded, that means he's acting out. And now you
mhm,
start to go down this rabbit trail, and
mhm.
there's hysterical and historical. And so like I feel
I like that.
hysterical because of the history here. So there's this skill that I know Kaylee probably uses as well. But what does it look like to lean in with curiosity in a non-judgmental, sacred, graceful space and just go, okay, what do I know to be true? All right, I feel connected to my husband. But I want to pay attention to whatever's going off in me. What do I
Mhm,
know to be true? Does he let me see his phone if I ask? And just
mhm.
and
Ground in
start, yeah,
reality. Mhm,
starting to ground myself in reality. Okay, maybe he's driving and he doesn't want to text me back and drive. So maybe I'll try him back in 30 minutes, and things like that. So just again, leaning in with curiosity, begin to ask you that self those questions because, like you said, you don't want to dismiss something that might be there,
mhm,
but you also don't want to jump on the train and go
mhm.
100 miles an hour if it's not true
Right,
either. So,
right.
do you
Yep.
talk a little bit about this in some of the anxiety and what else did you use? Anxiety and hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say validate yourself first. So very first thing, if my husband is not responding to me, right? I bet everyone listening, even if you're in a solid place without your partner, the ex partner, whatever, you can feel it in your body. Your vagus nerve is like, hello, I hear you, right? Just thinking about this scenario. Um, so yeah, you text him, he's not texting back, and your nervous system, your neuroception picks up. I remember, that's what it's saying. I remember when
Mhm.
this happens, I'm not safe. So one way to slow that down is to just notice what your body's doing and saying, oh, hello, body. Thank you for reminding me
Mhm.
that this might be an unsafe situation. Thank you for reminding me. That might sound crazy or like even like, ew, I don't want to thank my body that I'm sick of I'm sick of my trauma. I hate my betrayal trauma. Don't tell me to be grateful. So you don't have to say thank you. You can just say, I see you. I see you. Thank you. Okay, you don't have to say thank you, but you can say, I see you.
Yeah,
And then,
it's really about honoring yourself, right?
right. And so
Because
you're
what we
showing up with
can
that
do
self compassion,
right, we
right?
can just focus on him, and then we've absolutely almost dishonored ourselves and our bodies at what
Yep.
is happening, and it can actually be both and. You can honor yourself and then
Yes,
ask
both.
questions.
Exactly. I always say two things can be true. More than two things can be true. So I could be having a big reaction and he could be safe and he's not safe, right? It can be a lot of different things. So I'm tapping into, okay, I remember this, and this is the data that makes sense. I make sense. So it's a lot of that self-compassion language. Like, I make sense that I'm overwhelmed and hysterical. Use that word. I'm paranoid. I'm hypervigilant. I make sense. I'm not broken. I'm not messed up. My heart racing, my stomach churning, my hands sweating, my brain thinking of all these disturbing thoughts that I don't want in my head. I hate
Yeah,
it all, but
yeah,
it makes sense. And just showing up with a little bit of that, if you can get in the habit,
yeah,
just that is going to start slowing things down. Because when instead we're like, I hate this, I don't like this, I'm sending more messages, I'm not safe, right? Because I'm not safe with me. So be safe with me first. And then absolutely ground in the data. What data do I have? Okay. And by the way, not just data of what you see, and definitely not data of what you hear, right? So a lot of times what we want to be true is that he's safe. So we'll say, well, he said da 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 da. So I should just accept that and ignore my body's telling
Trust
me
but
that I'm not safe.
verify.
Right. So it's like, he said blah, blah, blah. So it must be true. So I'm going to ignore my body and I'm going to just lean into what they say. We trust action consistently over time. And what I think is maybe even more importantly, energy. And I don't necessarily mean woo-woo energy.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think you probably know what I mean. It's that neuroception energy. It's that part of us that can sense, is it okay?
Something's
So
off.
if I'm regulated and I feel like something's off, something's off. And I can start to trust that. So then I check the data, which includes my gut, something's off, right? But I can check, okay, he does this every day, this every day, this every day, this every day. And I get calm and quiet. And my intuition tells me you're okay. Or my intuition tells me something's off and you need to do a little more figuring out what that is, right? Whether that's a request or whatever aligns with your integrity is next step for boundaries. So, but at the end of the day, we remember, like you said, trust but verify. So,
And
it's not just
that verify to me, like there are times where you just got to see eyeballs. Like that would be, I would say this particular scenario that we're talking about, because you don't want to be like, texting, but I would probably, after I kind of ground myself in that scenario that you just talked about, I would probably pick up the phone and text and just say, hey, will you FaceTime me when you got a minute? And then as you're waiting on that, you can continue to ground yourself, whether that's even picking up a blanket or walking outside and taking your shoes and socks off and getting in the grass and staying true to yourself. But I think just being able to vulnerably step into a conversation when you do get that FaceTime and just say, hey, when you left, I had some things going on and, I just want to make sure, is everything okay? And those are eyeball times where I need to see eyeballs, because it really will. I think you mentioned energy, but that's where sometimes you can actually
sense.
Okay, I think things are okay.
Yeah. And what you're describing is so important when we're talking about who's the expert of this situation, because I'm pro therapy. Obviously, I'm a therapist. I'm pro coaching. I'm pro getting the support you need. But at the end of the day, you are boots on the ground right in the middle of the reality of your situation. And there is not a single human being, not your friend, not your bishop, not your religious leader, not your sponsor, not a single person that has as many clocked hours in that situation as you do, which means ultimately you are the expert of your own life and on your own journey and what needs to happen next. And that sucks. I'm hearing it, right? I've been there. I've been through it. I've been through the hell of it for many, many years without support and with support. And it sucks because you're like, can someone just tell me what to do? But it can also bring so much empowerment to know this. And this example you gave is just a perfect example to show why you're the expert. Because like you said, you're the one who knows when I look at my partner in the eyeballs and I'm grounded or regulated and I'm in my body, I'm going to have the best chance of determining what's going on and if I'm emotionally safe, psychologically safe or not than anybody else.
Yeah.
So that's a great example.
Good. And I would just say, for that woman who was like, this is just too hard. This is just too much work. I'm going to say yes, but there's work for healing and restoration. And there's work to stuff everything and put it under the rug. So there's work on both sides. So which is the work that you want to do?
Yeah.
And the work that we're just talking about right now, that one instance, when you move through that instance, that is confidence and that is empowerment. I think you used the word empowerment. And now that is the gift that I get and the gas that I get in the tank to move me to the next time.
Totally.
And that is a beautiful process.
Well, and I would add that that feeling of this is too much work. I don't want to deal. And so then and I've been there, we go weeks or months and we're just like, it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. I don't want to deal. Right. That is
I don't
another
understand at all what you're
that
talking
is another superpower of the inner survivor. So the
about.
inner survivor has a lot of powers. One of them is fire. One of them is just like, I'm going to just take out the town with fire. She becomes a dragon, right? One of them is water. I'm going to bend and mold and manipulate myself to be whatever you need me to be so that I don't get hurt. And one of them is wind. Adios, amigos. I don't want to do it. I'm out of here. Too much work. No, thank you. Avoid, distract. I'll be on my phone. I'll be with the kids. I'll throw myself into work.
Yep.
And that survivor, some of us like lean heavily on one or the other, right? And we start calling that. Sometimes we'll call it. That's where it gets pathologized. Oh, you're codependent. Oh, your survivor's just using water powers.
Right.
That sounds a little cheesy, but
No,
it's just
totally
the
accurate.
way you're surviving. Okay. If you're collapsed, oh, you're just enabling, or I'm preserving energy, right? So there's another side to every coin, and it's a survival strategy. And so I love the way you said that, is to just like come to that inner survivor who's just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Nope. Avoid, which is that really windy, blustery, because sometimes a tornado, right, of avoidance, and be like, I hear you and thank you. Let's think of all the ways that this has helped me. Okay, remember when we were having our babies and we were breastfeeding and we actually had these lovely, beautiful moments, even though all kinds of gross stuff was happening with him on the other side and I was just avoiding all of it. But guess what? I got to have those moments with my babies. Thank you, inner survivor, right? So we can go through all of those good parts and then have like a come to Jesus moment, like you just described, and say, okay, this is heavy. This is hard work.
Yeah.
Why don't we try something different?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for alerting us. And every time I know that my inner wind mode is hopping on, I'm like, oh, I'm avoiding. That's actually my alarm system. Oh, thanks. Okay. But now I have to ground. Now I have to do all those, like you said, the grass, the breathing, the heavy blankets, whatever it is, right? There's a whole ton of things we can do. Okay. And now I can take that next step. So I love that example that you gave, because it's a beautiful conversation to have with your inner survivor of like, great work. You've probably really saved us a lot of heartache without even knowing it. And we're going to have to get some eyeball time and step into that role as the as the expert of the situation, so that we can get long-term safety and not just short-term safety.
Yeah.
And joy, not just safety, but like thriving and joy and like such a beautiful life and such a happily ever after that you can live. And maybe it will be with your partner, right? Like once we step into that inner thriver and we start thriving in our life, they might join you. They might not, but they might. We do shake up that system when we do that, and they have that opportunity to join you. And it's going to be ugly for a while, but they might. They did for me. They do a lot of times, not every time though. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And I think, like, if you are a mom out there, I know so many of my audience, they're moms as well, wives and mothers. And so I want to fast forward. If you're a mom of little babies, I want you to just think about this for a second. Your daughter, or let's say your son is in high school, or daughter, it doesn't matter, or in middle school, and they come home and they're absolutely in tears and they've been bullied. And you have this moment, total separate situation from what you've been on. And we're fast forwarding years where you've got this recovery and these tools in your toolbox. And I can remember certain instances where my kids would come home and they've had a broken relationship with a friend or whatever. And I literally would step into the bathroom. Sometimes I could be very present right at that moment and step in. And sometimes I was like, you know what, Mel? You want to like burn the school down. So like, let me step into the bathroom.
Right. It's like, I'm going to go
Not be
hit a
Mama
third
Bear.
grader.
Yeah. And I would regulate myself for a moment. And I'd
Totally.
step out of the bathroom. And so the very tools that we are talking about right now are tools that you're going to take into parenting and to
Forever.
all of your other relationships, your extended family, all the things. And so it's not necessarily great that you got to where you are today, but these tools will be used for a lifetime. And to see my kids use the tools that I have gained through this process is, and I have 4 adults now, between the ages of 22 and 28. It's so beautiful, and it so
It
redeems
is.
part of the work in our stories.
Oh, I
So,
love that. Yeah. I mean, I think when we go through this process and develop these skills and tools, that's why I use that term resilience rather than recovery. I still use the word recovery or healing because it fits and that's what people, are more used to using. But I do think the term building resilience actually is more accurate in this
yeah,
process because
yeah,
we don't arrive. You don't get to this day and you're just like now impervious to every hard thing that's ever going to happen to you, including betrayal. That
right,
is, I think, something that our inner survivor will tell us, especially if we have a win survivor. Like, if I leave this relationship, my pain will be over. We need to get out of here. And that's just not true. I'm not saying you have to stay either, but no matter what steps you take in the relationship with your partner, pain will come in this lifetime. And so this is the opportunity, ugh, ick, right? But this is the time you can choose to gain these skills that will then build resilience, which is both a strong backbone and a soft center, or to be both strong and flexible, be able to experience hardships and feel like you can respond from a place that aligns with your integrity. And that is an ability that, I mean, that's a pretty priceless ability that really can navigate you through pretty much anything you go through in this life. That doesn't mean as a resilient person or a person building resilience that you won't have grief, you won't have anger, you won't have sadness. We'll have all the emotions because
yeah,
that's a part of a full life, but that you'll be able to feel them and not be like tanked or stuck by them.
yeah.
Um, and so that is kind of why I tend to use that term.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's a big word that I love to use as well.
Hmm.
Um, so talk a little bit about your resources and your tools
Oh
and
yeah.
your coaching practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right now, I actually don't have anything super readily available. I have one-on-one coaching that's available, but soon, we'll be launching a digital program that can be done online, but there's also a group coaching component that goes along with it called Betrayal Navigation Academy. So keep
Nice.
your eye out for that. But
Yeah.
mostly, I like to offer a lot of free resources. I really have just kind of like been the free resource guru. I love to point people in the direction of good, solid, research based um, support.
Yeah.
So I have a free Facebook group called Humans Navigating Betrayal. There's getting close to 6,000 members on there, and they
Nice.
post. There's
Nice.
probably 50 posts a day, people telling their stories, lifting each other up, connecting and sharing. And in that group, pinned in the resource area in the group, it's just databases on how to find therapists, how to find coaches I mean, I'm just not a gatekeeper on resources. So
Right.
I'm happy to share your resources as well, Melody, in there. Because I just believe what does my mom always say? There's a lid for every pot. That's what she talks about marriages. But I think that's true for us as therapists and coaches. I don't think I can help every single person on this planet. It might not be a good fit for them, but
Right.
someone out there can, and that's important to me. So I think I've got that available. The only stipulation is you have to have experienced betrayal. So if you have not experienced betrayal, then you can't join. But then I'm on social media. So I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook at Hey KayLee Dunn. So I try to post on there just little snippets of good stuff so that people have stuff, right? I guess my husband and I, due to grad school and life and his career choice and having 5 kids, we lived under the poverty line for a very long time. And so it's just important to me to get as many resources to people as
Agreed.
possible.
Yep.
And then, keep moving forward. So that's what I've got available right now, but keep your eyes out for Betrayal Navigation Academy. Um, I don't know when this will air, so maybe you can cut this part out.
Yeah, just tell me like when it is, because like in the meantime, I could send you a link that just gives the women a free 30 days to my Life Beyond Betrayal program. But if yours is about to launch, then we can, tee it
Okay.
up to right before it
Well,
launches if you want.
okay. Well, I
The
was just
same
gonna
way
say
we do
that
my
that part can be left in. Hi, editor person. That part can be left in. But I
Okay.
was going to say that this summer a life coach, Kendra Last, she's a betrayal trauma life coach, and I are doing a retreat this summer,
Nice.
June 7th to 10th. So that's also a resource that will be
Okay.
available.
Yeah. If you'll send me links to all that, I'll make sure all that's in the show notes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And he's great about doing all that. So
Okay, awesome.
awesome.
Anyway, so that's what I've got available right now as far as coaching.
Well, we will get those out to everybody because I'm like you, as many free resources as we can get out to people. Thank the Lord it's not 2007 or 2000 anymore.
Oh
And
my
there's
gosh.
a plethora of stuff out
It
there.
is. I mean, I think that it does become complex and people, can feel overwhelmed by choices at times. So that's why I really like using this Facebook group as a way to share resources, because someone can say, I went to Bob's therapy center and I really liked them. And then Sally can say, I had this issue with this person. And I mean, not to say that cancels Bob or anything, but it just gives people some direction and some information. And then, someone else can say, oh, I really liked this certification of coach. And someone else can say, that didn't work for me for XYZ, but I could see how it could help for XYZ. And that tends to give people a little bit of direction.
Yeah.
On
I think
how they want to use it.
I think that's incredible. Yeah, no, I think that's really good. Yeah, I'll have to check out your community online as well.
Yeah, you're welcome to
Share that
join.
with ladies. So that's awesome. Well, any last parting words that you want to share before we hit
Yeah. So, I mean, wherever you are, imagining you're listening to this as a woman who's been betrayed and you're unsure of what to do next. So you're looking, or maybe you have made some really big choices and you're still kind of picking up the pieces. I want you to know that you make sense. Your bodily responses that feel out of control, you make complete sense in how you're responding. Are other people out there very similar to you who felt this way before. And two things can be true. Your story is very unique to you. That the way that you navigate it is not going to be the same way that anybody else. There's a different story for every person. And the last piece is that there's absolute hope for growth, for resilience, for healing. That at the end of the day, whatever your partner chooses, and if you want that to be reunification, I hope that's reunification for you. And if you want that to be ending the relationship, I hope that's ending the relationship for you. But that whatever they choose, you can have happily ever after in your own life. There is absolute hope for your own growth and joy and thriving and a beautiful life with you. And if you have kids and your work in this world, that hope is absolutely available to you. And I see it every single day in my work. So I know that that's true for you too.
That's awesome. I don't really think I have anything to add to that. It's just reminding whoever's listening that you're not alone, that there is community available. I'll put the link to your Facebook in there. I think just the only last thing that I just want to encourage women is information can be so supportive and so validating, but just remember it's not necessarily the remedy to healing, that you
Yes.
actually have to do the work to heal.
Uh-huh.
So information will
first step.
definitely help, but make sure that you're actually surrounding yourself with like-minded people that can walk with you and love you and really be your lifeline for you. And so you're not alone. Well, thanks so much for being here with us today. What a treat. I'm so excited. I'm gonna have to thank Julia for scheduling this, and just I feel like I've already found a a friend out in Arizona. So
Absolutely.
that's exciting. But thanks so much for giving us your time today, KayLee.
Thank you, Mel.
This episode has been brought to you by Life Beyond Betrayal. Life Beyond Betrayal is a comprehensive program that provides a community as well as 3 courses for women. The first course is Surviving Trauma Beyond Betrayal. Our second course is called Grieving Beyond Betrayal. And the third course is called Reclaiming You Beyond Betrayal. This is a self-paced program that you can take as long as you want to go through, and also provides a community so that you feel like you have the support that you need. So check out Life Beyond Betrayal membership at lifebeyondbetrayal.com.